so make it believable. The thing that I didn't really talk about is the fact that in paintings, as it is a question of choice, it's also a question of style, and you can do like realistic thing, you can do cartoonish thing, you can do semi-realistic thing. There's a painting movement that I really like is in French is impressionisme, so I believe that in English is impressionism. If you know or you don't really know about that movement, is the fact that photograph cameras are finally have been like invented in the 19th century, and so painters are slowly losing their work. A bit like us with AI now that is just generating beautiful pictures. So yeah, so they had to adapt themselves and to tell them how we can make a painting interesting, still believable, and really feeling like the mood of it. So you can have like the rising sun of Claude Monet, that is uh really cool to see, because this is where I told you that. So the painter like got a bit like further away than reality. He did not really wanted to represent what a photograph could show, and so he wanted to represent what he felt. And this is where you can see, as I told you earlier, even in real life, and this scene is actually from real life, you have some very simple values here. So that's a question of balance in your colors and saturation. Sorry. Like this, you can see that the values, even like warm values, are like super close from each other. And then you have that just one tone that is actually super like in French is tonic. So I don't know if you can say that it's a tonic. And even that tonic is not that much saturated, but it's just like, it's the focal point of the painting. And if you make it bigger, it's gonna feel like the same. You're gonna tell yourself like that's a beautiful foggy sun rising actually. Question of choice once again, Paul Signac. I believe this is a painting from a scene from Turkey. And yeah, with all like the boats and stuff like this, you can see that saturation is actually everywhere, but we can still feel the fact that that beautiful monument here. Oh, I thought it was like a really bright red, sorry. That beautiful monument is actually still visible here. And you have some super saturated here reflection and shadows. Because he had the balance of having a lot of like pastel colors and put saturation in your like shadows and dark values and stuff like this. And then we have Bert Morisot, not really sure of how to pronounce that name. That is a scene of a garden, and you can see that almost all the colors are cold. The brush strokes are really just, here to evoke nature. You can have the really calming like feeling while looking at it. Donc that so that garden scene, sorry, really has like a mood of it. And now I just chose some modern concept art that I found and that I knew existed, because usually these are people that I'm following on our station, of people with their choice of color and how I feel like the influence from the impressionism is usually palpable while we're looking at the illustration. I really like that scene. It's from Junhan here with the name. Okay, so Junhan, make that scene. And you can see that for me, there's like a feeling a bit like Claude Monet painting. And it's not really like a realistic way of handling your colors. And this is where you can have fun. Once you understand the color and light theory, you can do actually whatever you want with the colors. It's a question of choice and then of consequences of your choices. So here we have some super color palettes, and actually he still kept it. So it's like we have like a lot of colors, but they are pretty close from each other. So you can find some super like blue, saturated blue, and it's actually everywhere in the spectrum. It's like blue and green. If you do like a really like synthesize a color palette, you'll find essentially blue and green everywhere, and some yellow here. Even I believe it here it's it's yellow. I thought it was green, but yeah, and you have some warm color on like that part here of the boat, a bit here, there, some of the plants, and here, and I think that's it. Otherwise, it's like pretty cold colors everywhere. We have Greg Rutkowski. Sorry in advance, even if it's not here. You can really feel like the reference from Claude Monet. I'm not sure it's like intentional, but the scene is absolutely beautiful, and you can see that he has another color palette, and we have a majority of warm color, and that's where it's pretty interesting. The dark values are usually cold, I would say, except from the boats. But in the sea and the waves, you can see that these are very dark blues here, and also here it's almost getting to the green here. Otherwise, these are like some warm gray here. You can see that it's really in the yellow orange spectrum of color, and in the end you can find some cold gray, but for the rest this is all warm color while I'm color picking. This is where it's interesting to color pick when you do, for example, studies, because I would say that the hardest colors to guess while you're only looking at a illustration are the grays. Colored grays are like super subtle. Most of the time they're super subtle. So some cold gray on a very next to a very like vivid light or specific light is sometimes just like a neutral gray, or it's actually a warm gray, but everything is so warm around it that it feels almost cold because of the lack of saturation of colors in that gray, specific gray. When I'm watching this illustration and I see the surrounding part here, part of the sun that have like some super vivid colors, I feel like this part here is already cold gray, which wasn't the case. So that's the interesting part of your the color palette that you choose and how human eyes can perceive what they're seeing. At the end, we have Slavic Fedorzuk. I believe we pronounce it like this. I really like this illustration. I actually cropped it because it's really it's wider. I feel like we have like a saturated Totoro or Shiro, Ghibli movie vibe. So I like it. And you can see that he used saturation a bit everywhere. He has some use of pastel colors in the clouds, some of the vegetation, like the flowers, and yeah, stuff like this, walls of the houses. But otherwise you can see that even the shadows of the mountains are like super saturated. That's once again a question of choice, but once you put it in black and white, if it's still readable, that's a good illustration.
Can you put it in black and white?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I was about to do that. I believe it's not really working in black and white anymore. This guy is usually working with two colors. If you see his art station, that's pretty impressive. Sometimes he's just like choosing, I don't know, like yellow and green, and he's making like an entire illustration out of those two colors he chose. But here is pretty interesting because you can really feel, for me, I can really feel like the impressionism reference, I would say inspiration in the painting. And that's a layer, yeah, where I can draw on. So you can still see that there's a subject. It's actually pretty hard to see because it's like blending in. It's here. And you can still see like the shapes that he chose for the houses are just like pointy shapes. So that's pretty easy to see. And the vegetation here on the foreground, because it's darker than the rest. If you oversimplify it, the values are close, but they are still different. It means that you have different like zone, and these zones would be like this.
Saka, I think that's Japanese impressionism that they're using in this.
Yeah, that's probable. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So
I believe you're right.